You know, if it's not about sports, I find it very hard to concentrate.
What's up, guys? It's Braden here, and today we are talking about the time when the Globetrotters actually lost a game. If you've ever been to a Harlem Globetrotters game, you know that the whole point is for them to always win. They almost always play the Washington Generals, and they always win. They goof around, entertain the crowd, do tricks, and all that. But in the end, they always win. It's like wrestling, where the outcome is more or less predetermined, and the rules of the game are bent in favor of the Globetrotters. It's designed to ensure that the Harlem Boys always win. But what about the time that they didn't? On January 5th, 1971, the Globetrotters and Generals played in Martin, Tennessee. The Generals were scripted to lose, obviously. They played each other around 200 times per year, and as I said, the outcome would always be the same. The Generals' job was to make the Globetrotters look good, while also getting some pranks played on them and being the butt of most jokes. And by the end of the night, the fans would go home laughing and smiling after a Globetrotters victory. In the decades leading up to that fateful night in January of 1971, the Generals had lost thousands of pre-scripted games to the Globetrotters. Now, the Generals really only changed one thing about their routine, and that was their uniforms and team names. The team itself acted as 5 different teams. The other names they used were the Boston Shamrocks, the New Jersey Reds, the Baltimore Rockets, and the Atlantic City Seagulls. Now, on this night in January of 1971, they were playing as the New Jersey Reds, but it was still the Washington Generals, if that makes sense. To them, that night probably seemed like any other, just a run-of-the-mill performance. Little did they know that on that winter night, the game would become part of Globetrotters mythology, a story passed down from generation to generation, like a folktale or campfire story. As the game wore on, spectators noticed something a bit odd. For some reason, that night featured less gags and goofs than usual. I mean, there were the usual buckets of confetti being tossed, maybe someone got their shorts pulled down to reveal red and white polka-dotted underwear, but for some reason it occurred far less frequently that night. Now, something you should know is these goofs and gags usually are planned to happen when the Generals are on defense. When the Generals have the ball, they are allowed to play real basketball, meaning they can actually try and score without having to worry about being the punchline of a joke. However, when the Globetrotters have the ball, the Generals are expected to go along with the comedy routines and more or less just let the Globetrotters do what they want and score at will. It has been said that only around 30% of the game is real basketball. The remaining 70% is more than enough to guarantee a Globetrotters victory. The system is designed to give the Generals players a chance to show what they're made of, but also ensure that the fans go home happy after having watched a win from the team that they came to see. In other words, the deck is stacked against the Generals. But that night the formula wasn't working. The Generals seemed more serious and intent on winning. The Globetrotters toned down the amount of jokes and played defense tighter on the Generals, who were playing as the New Jersey Reds that night. Some say it was because of a dispute or argument between the two teams prior to tip-off, and maybe, just maybe, deep down the Reds wanted to beat the Globetrotters just once. Whatever the case was, the Reds started the game on fire. They got ahead early, and as the game continued on, they ran up the score more and more. The Globetrotters weren't used to this, didn't plan for it, and some of them likely weren't even paying attention to the score. From the reports I've read and the research I've done, many sources say the Globetrotters didn't even realize how far behind they were falling. Not exactly a surprise, as the score isn't really something anyone pays attention to. It's essentially just a formality in games like this. At least most of the time. But tonight it wasn't. It wasn't until there was only 2 minutes remaining in the game that the Trotters realized they were down by 12 points. That's when they began to rally, knowing that the possibility of actually losing was as real as it had ever been. The Globetrotters managed to gain a 99-98 lead with 10 seconds left, when the Reds coach called the timeout. Reds owner and player Red Klotz, who, despite being 50 years old in 1971, still had some mileage left in the tank, told the team to get him the ball so that he could take the final shot. The Generals have always maintained that they are told to never miss on purpose. The idea is that their defense is fake, but their offense is authentic. But regardless, Klotz was given the ball and drained the shot, giving the Reds the lead by a score of 100-99. It's been speculated that Klotz actually tried to miss purposefully, but by sheer dumb luck, still somehow made it. Now, is this true? Klotz has always said that he was trying to score, and he wanted to win, and I suppose he's the only one who truly knows, so I'm willing to accept that explanation. Maybe the Globetrotters expected him to miss and didn't guard him as closely as they should have. The timekeeper stopped the clock, giving the Globetrotters one last chance to win. While normally the clock doesn't stop after a basket, it was common for timekeepers to play fast and loose with the rules to give the Trotters the advantage. The ball was given to Meadowlark Lemon, a talented player whom had been praised by former Globetrotter Wilt Chamberlain, with Wilt calling him, quote, the most sensational, awesome, incredible basketball player I have ever seen, unquote. It was likely that the Reds figured it would be another incredible and thrilling Globetrotters win, and they stepped away and let Lemon take his shot uncontested. Lemon delivered the same hook shot he had made hundreds of thousands of times before, but something strange happened. He missed. The timekeeper scrambled to stop the clock again and give the Trotters a shot at redemption, but unfortunately the buzzer sounded before he could, and the Globetrotters and the fans in attendance stood there in stunned disbelief. Kids began crying and fans began booing, and Klotz himself said that the children at the game that night looked and acted as though his team had killed Santa Claus. After the game, the Reds celebrated as if they had won the NBA Finals. Klotz was sprayed with orange soda. Back in those days, Tennessee was a dry state, meaning possession of alcohol was not legally permitted, meaning no champagne. Some reports say that Abe Saperstein, owner of the Globetrotters, came into the Reds locker room and began screaming at the team for having the nerve to actually win. This is according to Roy Keevil, a former Generals player who had played on the Reds team that night. Dick and Barbara Hutcherson, a Tennessee couple who attended the game that night with their son who was 2 years old in 1971, were expecting a fun night in which the Globetrotters won and their son got to see some over-the-top theatrics. Barbara worked at the University of Tennessee Martin campus, where the game was held. She has since retired, but upon recalling that night, Barbara said, quote, it happened during Christmas break in January before the students had to be back. Therefore, our campus has no account of it, because it was a student-run newspaper, and they were gone. There were no pictures, no article, or anything about it, unquote. Barbara recalled the Globetrotters playing in Tennessee as early as the 1950s, making stops in McKenzie, Tennessee, and Jackson, Tennessee. Of course, this was the 1950s, and the Globetrotters, who had several African-American players on their team, were not treated well by locals. They were denied entry at restaurants and refused service at businesses. They ate crackers in the back of a supermarket due to not being allowed to eat anywhere else. By the 1970s, attitudes had changed and the world had become a better place. Dick Hutcherson said for that game in 1971, everyone was very welcoming. Of the experience, he said, quote, they're so entertaining. Everybody was excited to have the Globetrotters here. It was a good time. We loved watching Meadowlark Lemon. He was so funny, like a clown, and he was pulling all these tricks. It was something to see, unquote. Klotz recalled the rare win for his team, saying, quote, it seemed like the rim was the size of a trash can lid for us and a thimble for them, unquote. Dick Hutcherson basically said he thought that when the Globetrotters were down by so much, they were scripted to come back and win. He said, quote, we thought it was some choreographed deal, and they were going to come back at the end, unquote. Meadowlark Lemon was apparently furious at the result, but did congratulate the Reds/Generals on their victory. Many excuses have been put forth as to why the Globetrotters lost that night. It has been reported that Curly Neal, Harlem's best player, did not play that night. The timekeeper was also blamed, as he failed to stop the clock during some of the Globetrotters' theatrical skits. It has also been reported that the owner of the Globetrotters, George Gillette, personally chewed out the coach for allowing this loss to happen. Initially, it was covered up by the Globetrotters. As Barbara Hutcherson said, there was little to no media coverage. But soon, the Trotters realized that they were looking at this the wrong way. Hiding their loss did no good, but telling people that they had lost created an intriguing possibility for many fans. What if the game they went to, they would also see the Globetrotters lose? The organization soon acknowledged the defeat, and today it's even noted on the official website. It showed that the Globetrotters were not entirely unbeatable, and maybe, just maybe, it could happen once again. The Generals have not won another game since that winter night 53 years ago, and honestly, they most likely never will. But the Generals' job isn't to win games, but rather entertain and make the fans laugh and give them a fun night to remember. Red Klotz has stated in interviews that on January 5th of 1971, his team looked as though they could have beaten anyone. And since then, whenever he has looked up into the stands and saw children laughing and having fun, even while the Generals were losing, that it felt like his team had won once again. And if you ask me, helping young kids to fall in love with sports makes them winners every night they play, in my book. Before I sign off, I just want to leave my Venmo handle here. Once again, no pressure to donate, but it does help the channel. I am trying to start my own sports media company, so if you want to donate, I would be very thankful. But other than that, leave a like, comment for the algorithm, and peace out.